Welcome to this podcast episode. Today I'm talking to Heather Lynch. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
And you are all about inner development, taking care of your inner self in your work, or at least for the last couple of years. Um, and before that, you worked at various companies and organizations. You also spent the time at, PricewaterhouseCoopers, I think it is.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, should we start there? So, how did you end up there at this really large consultancy company?
Yeah, I studied economics and international development at university and was very interested in both those uh, topics and wanted to find a good way to contribute. I was always interested in how do I contribute, how do I give back. I spent some time before university and after university in Sierra Leone and in Tanzania doing volunteering. And that really got me interested in international development. And the economics part was something I'd kind of, I'd done at school. I was good at maths. I could kind of do it. And it was interesting and useful because it's how the world works. So I thought I'd go study that, but the international development part was super interesting to me, to understand more about how do we support people in the global south. And yeah, I studied that for 4 years, did a placement in international development in a consultancy, so delivering aid projects, mainly around economic development projects in Bangladesh, in India, in Africa, and then wanted to be part of something bigger where I could get training, be a bit more generalist. Wasn't really sure what I wanted to do or how I wanted to contribute, but knew I always wanted to contribute and be part of solving global problems. And for me, inequality, poverty, was really what I was interested in. So PwC had a international development practice and a sustainability practice. So I joined on their grad scheme and quite quickly, like their management consulting grad scheme, and quite quickly went into the international development work there. And so was managing aid projects around climate change, around impact investing for around 5 years, and eventually shifted a bit more into sustainability work, helping companies with their purpose, working with investors on ESG and impact investing, and how do you look at companies and understand whether they're having an impact. And yeah, so I was there for 5 years, and got to the point where I was questioning whether I was really having an impact. It felt really big and it felt quite corporate. I didn't really want to progress that much there. And I wanted to be closer to the impact. And so I then went on a journey, left that, did a program called On Purpose, which was all about exploring what is your purpose. And it was the first thing that I did where I really had the chance to start looking into myself and understanding what is it that I'm about? What do I want to contribute? Who am I? What am I good at? I started getting mentoring and coaching at that stage. That was about 5 or 6 years ago. And that kind of started me on the journey I'm on now. I got to really think about and explore what is it that I want my life to be about? What are the things that are holding me back? Why am I doing certain things that I'm doing? Why do I think I need to contribute in these certain ways? And yeah, and then that led me on to another job, which was in sustainability in a smaller company.
We get to that. First, let's go a big bit back to what you just mentioned. You're doing these projects in Sierra Leone, um, and was it Tanzania?
Mm.
How did your worldview change by doing those projects? Because you had this feeling of doing good, from a Western point of view, from living in the UK, and how did you feel working actually there where the help was really needed?
Yeah, I think it completely changed me. I'd done some traveling before and had become aware of inequality and became very aware of my privilege and all the opportunities that I had. I had the opportunities to go to school, to go to university, to get a job at somewhere like PwC. That comes from a certain amount of privilege. So seeing and being aware of places and people where they don't have that and they don't have those opportunities. For me, it just felt really unfair. And I was like, why me? Like, why have I got this and other people don't? And so it made me want to help in the best way I knew. And at the time it was, yeah, go and volunteer and help. And I think being able to see people's lives, like, people they were living in um just very different, very um simple lives, but equally very content, and the way that they looked at the world was completely different. Like we have a kind of like an achievement based, materialistic, consumption based, you got to like do all this stuff, you got to get all this stuff from outside to be happy. And I just saw people who had relatively nothing on the outside, but were some of the kindest and happiest people I've ever met. And it just made me, I think that experience just made me really question or think about happiness and what is it that we're trying to do? Why am I living in this certain way, or why am I striving towards certain things? And also, how do I use the opportunities I have to help other people, to do good for other people? So it made me, I guess, committed. And it's still what drives me now. I think I've had a certain realizations, and you go through this like, okay, am I being a white savior by doing this stuff or doing this work? Is it really helping if I'm trying to like put our economic capitalist system into the global south? Like, should they want what we want? Like, is it actually what humans need? Is that what makes us happy? So I guess I started thinking about that from when I was quite young, and always being quite, when I studied international development, a lot of my research or essays were like, is it good for Westerners to go and volunteer? What is the impact of microfinance? Is it because it's getting people into a lot of debt? Is like the presence of NGOs good? Like, I was questioning all this stuff from quite young, as to whether the Western involvement in that, like what's helpful and what's not. And that's been my kind of ongoing inquiry, is to, okay, how do we best help support everyone in the world, and also not take the stuff that we have that isn't actually helpful, or our mindsets or the values that we have, and put them on other people. And that I guess it keeps coming back to yourself. And where I got to was like, okay, it starts with me and how I show up, and where can I actually contribute. I was focused on contribute all the way out there, help the poorest people, when it's like, well, actually there was quite a lot of stuff within me that was not doing that from a healthy place. And actually, if we change the system from where I'm at, which is actually kind of contributing, the individualistic mindset or the materialistic mindset is a Western one. And if we shift it here, and with the people around us, that the impact for change is huge, right? And you can only do what you can do. So starting with yourself makes sense, and then rippling out from there. So I've gradually kind of got closer and closer to just focusing on, okay, how can I change? How can I be the change that I want to see, so that other people can benefit from that, and without kind of having any feeling like I can change the world. I think that's where I was at. I had this kind of righteous, like, this is so bad, like I need to change it, it's not fair. And that's not really particularly helpful. And it wasn't kind of coming from a like a whole place within me. And so, yeah, I wanted to look at that, and how do you actually help contribute in the best way, and also in a way that makes you happy, right? I spent so long being absorbed in the world's problems. I started in kind of poverty, and read a lot about all things that were happening in the global south. I studied genocides and civil wars and all of that, and then moved into sustainability and environmental work, and then started becoming aware of all of that information, and was just kind of like loaded with it. And it was very debilitating for me. I didn't really have the tools at the time to manage the emotional load of that. And it felt really heavy. And I felt a very strong duty to do and contribute, but sometimes it was coming from a place that was like felt guilty or shameful, or I felt fearful or anxious or angry about the future or what was happening. And that again wasn't healthy for me. Like it was degenerative for me. It was not sustainable for me to carry on trying to contribute in that way. And I also don't think that's a good way to contribute to the world, because you kind of what put you get what you put in, kind of, if I act from that way, that is kind of what's going to happen and come back.
I'm involved with the inner development goals
Mm.
pretty much, and some of the feedback that the IDGs get is that it's focused on the self, which is a selfish act, right? So it's so much focused on the inner development of an individual, of the person themselves. What good is it to the world? How do you, and I've listened to your podcast, so I know a bit about it, but how do you see that? Because you talked about how you had to first find yourself and improve your thoughts and feelings about that part.
Yeah, I think of it, it's kind of like yourself is here. And actually, if you become the best version of yourself or the highest version of yourself, and maybe I'll come back to what I mean by that, you can basically contribute and be in service of the greater good. So like I see it as this is like self-actualization, systems actualization. It's like a regenerative model. But the better version of a person you can be, the more you can contribute to change. So it's not an act of selfishness. I think when people work on themselves, they are giving the greatest gift they can to the world, because they are coming from a more coherent place. So maybe like by best version of yourself or highest version of yourself, I mean, you understand yourself, you understand what you're good at, you understand what's important to you, you're living in alignment with who you are, and you actually understand yourself better, and you're not in stories that people have told you, you're not in the conditioning of what society has told you to be or what your parents told you to be, or you're not held back by all these limiting beliefs that so many of us have, that we're not good enough, that we need to find our worthiness in the worthiness of our work, that we are scared of what people think of us, that we just want to kind of play small and not stand out because we're scared that we'll get rejected. All these things and stories people have, or you can kind of be in you blame life or you blame other people for the circumstances of your life or the circumstances of the world, and you're like all these things take up a huge amount of headspace and kind of keep us small or keep us down or keep us kind of perpetuating I don't know, talking about the problems or being in our own heads and being upset with ourselves, rather than actually resourcing ourselves in the best way, in a way that is aligned with what change we want to see. So I also like being like helping people tap into what is the vision that they want to see, what is the world they want to be part of. And it's why my stuff is called Becoming the Change. It's like, how do you really know what the future is that you want to be part of, and how do you become that now? Because when we're acting from a place of incongruence, like out of alignment, where we might be doing stuff. So say for me, it was like I was doing like good jobs that were meant to be making a positive impact on the world, but I was not happy. I was not fulfilled. I had a whole load of fear about the world, and I was kind of putting that into my work. I also had all these beliefs that I wasn't good enough, that I needed to prove myself, I was a perfectionist, and all this stuff. And that's not helpful to the chords and what you're trying to do. So actually, if you work on, and I also wasn't doing something that I was naturally good at, like my skills are not in working in corporate. It doesn't light me up, or working in business or trying to make the business case for sustainability. That drained me a lot. And I felt also the more I learned about the roots of the problems, I started doing systems thinking course. I understood like how much psychological stuff and mindset is what is driving all the outcomes, and we're focused on the end world problems. I started to become very my work was very incoherent. Like I just wasn't happy doing. I didn't believe in what I was doing. I didn't find hope in what I was doing because I didn't really think it was actually what the world needed, and that completely drained me. Whereas the kind of opposite of that, if you work on yourself, you understand what you're good at, you understand what's important, you understand what is the world I want to be part of creating. How can I be the happiest, contentest, fulfilled version of myself and just let go of all these things that are stories that someone has told me or that I keep telling myself to keep me small, and let them go. Then you can flourish and thrive, and then your impact ripples out from there. And I think, do you know the circle of concern? I always come back to this, or circle of control. There's like, it's a diagram. It's in the middle is your circle of control, which is essentially you. It's how you think, how you act, how you speak, what you do. That is basically all any of us can ever really control. Like we are out of control what anyone else does, whatever else happens in the world. Outside of that is your circle of influence. So what you do and what you say can have an impact on other people. And then on the outside is your circle of concern, which is basically, I don't know, anything that you're worried about, the world's problems, whether it's climate change or poverty or war or politics or the health system or anything. And the more time you spend, like we only have a finite amount of energy as individuals. And if you're putting all your energy into things and talking about things, and your head, your thoughts or your headspace is in the place of concern, that's going to drain your energy. That's going to take you away from the one thing that you can actually do, which is and can control, which is you. So like if you focus on getting yourself into the best resource state, your capacity suddenly massively grows to be able to do a lot more, to have a lot more energy, to be more creative, to be more impactful, but not in a way that's like, oh, I'm trying to, like when you're trying to strive or fix the problems on the outside and your energy is all in that and talking about it, but you don't have any agency, it can be super draining. So I think, yeah, our human growth, I mean, is really the only thing we can do. Like to focus on yourself is the greatest act of service, I think, for the world. And I think it comes from when you let go of your ego that comes with that, the kind of, because it's not thinking about yourself, it's kind of being able to be so in alignment with yourself, you aren't actually thinking about yourself, and to be so happy with who you are, that you love yourself, that you accept yourself, that you aren't even thinking about yourself anymore, right? You're just acting in a way that is like loving and inspired, and you're naturally motivated, you're more creative, you're like more joyful, and that spreads. So it's kind of, for me, it's, yes, there is a lot of work to do on yourself. I mean, it doesn't really have to feel like a lot of work, but it's not necessarily about you. Like doing the inner work is not necessarily about you. It's actually so you can forget you and kind of contribute to whatever change you want to see in a way that makes you feel good. So it's kind of like a upward spiral. Like you feel better about yourself, which means that others feel better around you. And if you're working towards something that really matters to you, like others, like it just brings people on the journey with you. And I feel like that's really how we can make change, in all that we can really do is to like come from that place, because it ripples out and the impacts, I think, and our potential as humans is limitless, right? If we focus on becoming that version of ourselves that can then contribute out and be of service to the greater whole.
I think this is closely related to the Stoicism for me,
Mm,
right? With the Stoicism, one of the foundations is that the only thing you control is how you respond to things.
mm,
Even when you become sick, this is all about you, but you're not control that you become sick at some point. So but how you respond to becoming sick, that is in your control, right? How you emotionally react to the things, that is in your control. So to me, that's really interesting. And I was also thinking about Gandhi, for example, right? So taking your ego out and focusing on a topic like how to remove violence from everything that you do, right? Having conversations without violence, having meetings without violence. Um, so I think that is really contributing to to the whole, to the system, to everything. And I also I'm still wondering all the time, is it really possible to take out the ego and just care about others? And I don't know. I think it's an endless journey. Well, not endless. It will end when I die, of course. But so I'm not sure. I will always. That's why I invited you to learn more about this. But I'm still always doubting on this, right? So I believe in inner development. I support inner development goals, as these values are important to us. These skills are important to us to contribute to a better future for all of us. I believe that we should improve ourselves, but also I can also understand that the improvement business is also a part of capitalism, right? So it's like the never-ending feeling that we are enough, or good enough, or right enough. It's also a part of capitalism, right? Then we spend money on how we can improve ourselves, and the system keeps on turning, right? So I think it's a to me, let's put it that way. To me, it's still a very difficult idea, and it kind of like goes from left to right in my head.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. And I think on the ego, just on your point on the ego, I'm just like, yeah, maybe I think I had something. I was like, you just have to befriend it. You just have to be aware of it, and when it comes up, and just choose how you want to respond to it. And I think on your point of kind of doing the inner work, like I do a lot of mindfulness, and I'm like, it doesn't need to cost money doing this stuff. Like it can be just the work each of us does in like the privacy of our own hearts, just to be able to be aware of our thoughts, to be aware that we are not our thoughts, and that you can bring yourself back all the time. Like I kind of got to the realization where I was like, the present moment, like this is literally all that exists, like right here and now. We create all of these stories in our head. We worry about the future and what the future is going to look. We think about the past and we worry about what we did or what someone thinks of us, or we're thinking now about, you're not actually here. And we always have capacity to be here. And in here is like um is a coherent space. It's you're at peace with what is. And what you're saying about Gandhi, like I think that, and like nonviolent communication or authentic relating, like thinking about how we speak and how we act, and even in our thoughts, because our thoughts really determine what comes out. Like for me, self-compassion and grace and love for yourself has to kind of come first with a lot of this work, because you then give that to other people. And I think often we can think, well, this is what I found, and maybe my experience with it, you can think you're doing something good for the world, but you actually might be causing more harm if the language you're using and the energy that you're coming from, or the thoughts that you're coming from, are actually quite harmful. Whether it's like, you think the world's going to end, or you're really fearful of the future, or you think everyone else is bad and they're to blame, and it's or you're trying to fight climate change or tackle poverty, like all this language I've used all the time in my career. And I now believe that the words that we speak and how we talk about this stuff, and where you put your energy and attention, it actually can make that thing worse, or make it more likely that it will come true, because we're actually just being like, okay, we need to fight climate change, we need to do this and reduce carbon emissions. You're like, that's not really actually the problem. That's not the issue that society is really facing. Like it comes down to a much deeper level of disconnection that we have from ourselves, from each other, and from nature. Like we have put ourselves as separate, and we're trying to control all these things, and we're focusing on the actual end outcomes rather than thinking about who are we as people and what are we here to do and how do we actually find peace. So I think finding like the whole kind of peace and leading from love is really important to me, because I think that even though you can be working to try and change these problems, you can be coming at it from a fear state as opposed to a love state, as opposed to a state where you have a vision of what kind of future you want to be part of. I remember because I was working as a head of sustainability before, and I was working on all these net zero projects and setting science-based targets and being like, oh, let's all move to EVs. But there was part of me that's like, I don't want, like, this isn't the what I don't want to be part of this world. Like it's kind of just like green colonialism, or we're just perpetuating capitalist system, but kind of trying to do it less bad. We're actually sustaining the system. And I was like, I don't want to be part of that. And I felt that very strongly, that I was just like, I was kind of like, oh yeah, we need to do this, and it's really important, and these problems are really bad, and we need to be doing something now. But another part of me that was like a quieter part was like, I don't agree with this. I don't really want to work towards a net zero where we're just enabling the economy and the system to work as usual, but just do it in a little bit worse way. Or yeah, I mean, we're still extracting stuff from, we're having an impact on other people. Like we're not acting as one, as though we are one and we're all interconnected. And I think that, yeah, that really made me feel, I added a lot of weight to me. Whereas now I feel like what I'm doing, and I also felt the weight of the world was way heavier, because I felt like I wasn't really contribute. Like I don't know, I didn't feel the agency. Whereas now I feel coherent in what I'm doing. I think it's really what will make a difference in the world, and I'm focused more on me rather than like all these big outward problems. So yeah. And also your point on the stoicism and reacting. I think it's like a John Kabat-Zinn quote that's basically the experience of your life is 90% how you react to it, 10% what happens. I mean, you could even argue it's 100% how you react to it. Like we're all just reacting to life the whole time. And like we have this part of us, which is our conscious awareness, which the more we can tap into that with mindfulness, meditation, whatever it might be, the more we can come back and not necessarily react or relate to things in the way that we are conditioned maybe to do, or that we habit. Like we just have these neural pathways, these things that will take us back into reacting in a certain way. And actually, if we can start to interrupt those thoughts and create new pathways and new thoughts that are more helpful to us, to other people, whether it's how we relate to ourselves, and if we talk to ourselves in a mean way or a critical way, or whether we are judging other people, we're annoyed at other people, or we're annoyed at the world, or we kind of fear of the world. Like we're always responsible for that. Like I always have a choice as to how I react to anything. And the more that people then kind of take responsibility for that and for their experience of life, and actually realize, oh, I have a choice. I remember when I kind of realized this with my therapist, I was like, I always have a choice. Like I'm always choosing. It's never someone else. Sometimes I'd come in and talk about like something that annoyed me, or I'd be like, the world is awful, or this person did this, and she will always just make me come back to me. Like life is just a mirror, and I'm just reflecting out. And it would be like every time it's me, it's how I'm choosing to relate to what's happening, and the thoughts that I'm going into, and what's being triggered within me that is meaning I'm having that experience, and taking away the external blame, like putting it on the external and being able to look inwards and be like, oh, okay, no, it's me. Like I'm choosing, and I can choose to change this and that. And that just takes practice. And like you said, it comes back to like, yeah, it can be working with a therapist or a coach or going to retreats or going and doing all of this stuff. Or it can just be sit and be quiet and start to notice and build that muscle of actually being able to come back to your thoughts and be aware of what's happening within you and
Yeah.
deciding and making a more conscious choice how you respond to life.
Yeah. The time between stimulus and response.
Mm.
I I'm not good enough about that part yet. I believe
Really, I'm working on it.
because when I think about when I see like a muscle power car and they really put down the pedal and I hear the whoa and hold it, and that already it already gets me fired up inside to go like, oh my God, don't be so stupid, don't do that, and blah blah. So I have still a lot of difficulty with that. It's not easy. I'm working on it. I'm training it. I'm a referee in soccer, in the amateur soccer,
Mm.
and one of the reasons I'm doing that is to train how I respond in a match. Right? It's a very emotional sport. The players react to what decision I make about, is this a foul or not? And how do I respond to that, right? How do I cope with that? How do I respond? So it's a very for me interesting moment every weekend to train how do I respond in these situations and look back afterwards. So what could I have done differently? How could I have responded there? So it's an exercise for me.
Yeah.
So that's good.
I like that. I have that too. I have a dog. I got he's 3 now, but when he was a puppy, that was like a everyday practice all the time. Like how do I respond like when he will sit down and refuse to walk, like when he refuses to jump in the car, when he just runs off on a walk, when he barks at me and I don't know how to make him stop, like all of this, like I just used that as practice. I was like, okay, like like, how do I remain calm? Because it impacted my relationship. So if with him or like the ability of us to work together well, if I was in a more like stressed state, like he would feel that, and like it just, yeah, it became super important to me to be able to come back, to be calm and like remain cool. So yeah, I feel you in the like finding just everyday things where you can practice. It's the same when I started going to Zumba. I remember going and being like, oh, I can't do that. Like my perfectionist came in. I was like, I can't keep up. I can't keep up with this. And I was like, no, just kind of get into the flow of it. Just enjoy it. Don't think you have to be perfect. Like it was really good for me to like practice not being perfect or not judging myself or not thinking I wasn't good enough at something, like actually being bad at something. Like I kind of put myself in lots of situations where I'm um learning or growing or doing something difficult or doing something out of my comfort zone, because it continually then builds that muscle of being like, oh no, I am okay, or oh no, I can keep my cool in difficult situations, and then you just have it for other stuff.
Right, right. I'm wondering. I'm just gonna um, um, talk to you and then see how you felt about this. I'm reading this book right now, which is a Dutch book, so it's not open for all English speakers, but I can tell you the title. The title is The Bermuda Triangle of Talent. So it is written by a Dutch young journalist who at the time was studying at famous English universities. And from there, he got into like consultancy first into the banking world, but then he moved to the consultancy world. And they like, um, how do you, with clay, that you are shaping the model, right? But when I'm not sure what the English word is, but you're shaping the world. So these consultancy firms and banking firms, they were so involved with the schools with doing like practical holiday seasons that where they worked like 6 weeks in these companies. So slowly they were formed into potential employees of these companies. And there's a huge people who want to work there, like 1 million people apply for these jobs, for these intern jobs, and then 6,000 of them get hired in total in a year.
Mm.
So there's a huge competition. And every time when you when he gets into a job, it's like, okay, I won, I need to go to the next step. But also, he was very driven to do like good work for the community. He wanted to do community work. He wanted, like a lot of people that he met, had really good intentions when they started, but they felt this is possibly a stepping stone that I can use, like to really go to the next step in the good work that I want to do. And people just stay. They just stay a lot longer than they want, and they just get like slowly eaten by this company, and their ambitions like slowly drains away by working there and just creating PowerPoints or slides and Excel sheets and just doing very mundane work. But it sounds so glamorous when they paint the picture from the beginning. Do you see something similar that's happening because you ended up for 5 years at PricewaterhouseCoopers that changed you and that process when you work in university and slowly you were prepared to go to like this big consultancy firms?
Mm. Yeah, I definitely felt that. You can't like I remember just feeling like I became a corporate version of me. Like I didn't like they had a tagline that was like bring your full self to work, but I didn't feel it. Like I felt like I had to be um something else, or I had to show up in a certain way, or I had to act in a certain way. And you also have I guess it's maybe the type of people that can get into that are the people that are have achieved a lot, who have put a lot of work in. I was A stars, A's, all the extracurricular, all the doing, as a TED event at university, like I did all the good things, got a good degree and all of that. And that you then kind of channel that into your work, and it's like, oh, you're constantly trying to do good and prove yourself and have your worth validated by being really good in your job. And then I guess you get a bit maybe you get sucked into just the system or the lifestyle, or sometimes people like to be able to say that they work in a certain company, it's got a certain like status to it. And yeah, people have different motivations, but yeah, I can see you kind of come to think in a certain way. It's such a big organization that you're kind of my organization, PwC, they introduced like a year before I left, like an impact council, which was good. And it was like an opportunity for us and the team to look at projects and question them and ask, do we want to do this? Like, do we agree with this? Should we be working with oil companies, even if it's on their sustainability strategy? Are we okay with this? And like it enabled people to have more of a voice, particularly, younger people who it's harder when you're in a hierarchical organization to have that. So yeah, bringing in initiatives like that were helpful for people to be able to have their voice. But yeah, I mean, I just got to a point where I didn't aspire to the type of roles that I was doing. I didn't like um, the work, or I didn't necessarily agree always with what we were doing. It was also just too big for me. It's quite hard to feel like you're contributing when it's that big.
But it also you can see it this goes on in my mind too, just to be clear. You can see it like, okay, you're making a huge impact, right? You're coaching for a couple of people or a couple of groups of people, but let's say maybe 1,000 people in your life you're coaching or something like that. And if you're doing this job, the impact on like a company with 10,000, 20,000 employees, it's much larger. What emotions do you get from those ideas?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. My kind of view is the opposite, or even I tried to like get away from like how do I have the biggest impact? Like that was such a driving question. Like how do I have the biggest impact on the world? What is the biggest problem we need to solve? How do I be there? I was like, it actually didn't help me thinking that way. I actually just felt like in the sense I was talking about earlier, like it just drained me because I wasn't doing stuff that lit me up or made me feel like alive and fulfilled and that made me happy. So I tried to let go of that idea of how do I have the biggest impact and actually just more follow me and what I think is right, and trust that the impact will ripple out from there, because you don't, like, I don't know, like, you coach one person, their lives may completely change and that changes everything around them and what they're capable of. And I also, with what I'm doing, I want to create more of a, it's one-to-one coaching, but it's also, there's group coaching, there's workshops, there's other things. Like, I'm still in development phase of all of this stuff, but like the potential to change how people feel and therefore change what they can then go out and do in the world. For me, I think that that could be massive, and also because it aligns with me, that makes sense. And I think where I got to in like all my impact jobs was just being like, oh, just finding, like, deciding on a problem that you think is important in the world and then trying to solve it is one I started questioning, am I actually solving it or am I perpetuating it? Like stuff in international development, you can I'm not sure it's actually helpful what I was doing. So that created a lot of incoherence within me. Likewise in sustainability that I was talking about earlier. Like, I'm actually not sure, like, this doesn't I don't actually think this is the impact I want to be having. And I notice this like with quite a lot of other change makers or people, like I work with people that are in these type of roles, and there's that feeling, it's kind of like there's something's not right. I don't really agree with this. And there is like a yeah, you have to meet the system where you're at. You need to like turn the the massive cruise ship like somehow. There is also a part of me that is like, how do we be the change now? How do we more embody the paradigm shift or the future or whatever it is that we want to see now? Like, I think we need people doing all sorts of stuff. And like when it's in alignment with you, then you kind of, yeah, you will flourish. But there are people who are just kind of like can work in the system as it is and shift the system from the inside. And there are people that are shifting the system, like kind of trying to come out and like create the new world and bring it back in. And I think that like both are needed, and it's whatever feels good for you. But like if it's got to be sustainable for us as individuals. And I just found when I worked in sustainability, I was like, this is not sustainable. Like I didn't burn out, but I was close to, like, it got to a stage where my organization, and this is happening with a lot of people now, they just started cutting the sustainability budget. So I've been working for 3 years on all these initiatives and all this stuff. And the company was then going through some financial issues and had to scale back everything that I'd been doing. And that was really hard for me to take, because everything in the world was getting a lot worse, like what's going on. And my like it was my outlet for like for all of that to do something useful in my work. So when that was taken away from me and I couldn't feel like I was contributing, it got me to a very low place. I felt completely overwhelmed, decapacitated, like I don't even know if that's a word. Debilitated, incapacitated. I don't know. I just remember people asking me like, "How are you?" And I was like, I don't know. Like, I just didn't. Yeah, I didn't feel okay. And at the time, I didn't have enough, um, I guess, emotional intelligence or ability to manage the grief I was feeling about the state of the world, and to actually be able to lean into the emotions, like whether the powerlessness, the overwhelm, the anxiety, the fear of what was happening in the world. I wasn't addressing that, and I was just kind of, yeah, coming out of my work. So the more I learned to like how to be with that, and how to be with what's happening in the world, and how to learn how to accept it. Yeah, it's made my life a lot easier. Like I feel like I've built the tools and resources to know that whatever is happening in the world and however bad it gets, I know I can find a place inside where it's okay. And that, yeah, is priceless for me, because before I wasn't there. Like I was totally like Um, I hated being part of the system and part of the world as it was, and I just was not in a good headspace. And I remember thinking like I wouldn't wish this upon anyone to feel this way, and to be this weighed down by the world. So actually building the resources to be able to know that I can be okay also, yeah, has changed things for me, and then learning and then figuring out what it is that I really
Hmm.
want to contribute also then gives me hope, and hopefully that's how I can have an impact. And I'm unattached to what it is. I don't have grand goals or anything like that. I'm just trusting that the more I put out of me and what I think, and um, speak from the heart, I trust that it will have some kind of impact.
If you now look back to your early times um, working like in Sierra Leone and the experience that you have now and the wisdom that you have now, how would you contribute now to these areas?
I mean, probably doing what I'm doing. Like I'm trying to just do whatever I think is right by, and like I'm driven. That's still a driver for me. Like I feel a lot of grief, or it weighs very heavily on me. The people who have least contributed to the world's problems are going to be the people that are most impacted. And I think millions of people are going to die in my lifetime, and that is really painful for me. And so my whole journey, or seeking, or wisdom seeking, whatever it is, has been towards how can I best be of service to those people. And it doesn't mean being really near them. It means shifting the way that I think and the thoughts that I have and how I show up in life, and working in closer to me and closer to where the roots are of the problems, which for me is in the way that we think. It's what's beneath capitalism. It's what's beneath like the colonial thinking. It's our mindset and what we value and what we believe, and trauma that we've got from our past, and how do we shift that? Because that is how I now believe. It's like the Rumi quote, which I use in my podcast. It's yesterday I was clever, so I tried to change the world. Today I'm wise, so I'm changing myself. And that is how I'd summarize the shift that I've gone on. Is to focus more on finding inner wisdom, inner guidance, of how best to contribute, as opposed to trying to learn everything. I've been on so many courses. I've been on like 7 courses the last 3 or 4 years,
Right.
around mindfulness, systems thinking, regenerative thinking, coaching. And I'm in a stage of just like trying to integrate all of that and just being like, okay, who do I actually want to be? If I stop just trying to be clever and learning and trying to know things, like what do I actually think the world needs? Like I think the world just needs more of us who are being like honest and being ourselves and being open-hearted and following what it is that we really believe in and that we really want to do in the world, and letting that be more of the driver rather than trying to always know more and do more. I got kind of like, I started doing systems thinking, like learning systems thinking, and then going into regenerative stuff. And it's a lot that you can take on. And like, if you don't have the inner resources or the self-compassion to be able, or the kind of concepts from maybe mindfulness about accepting what is, letting go, knowing that things are impermanent, like being able to have some kind of flowy, trusting, surrendering outlook on life, learning all of this, like this stuff, which I think is super important. Like I think it's really important that we understand how to work in complexity, how to think in systems, how to deconstruct, like internalize capitalism, all of that. But if we don't have the inner resources within ourselves to know that it's okay, we're just human, we're all just trying to do our best, and then I was like, that could just be my next version of burnout if I go into that world. So building my own inner resources. Um, yeah, and trusting more my intuition. And being able to tap into my intuition. I used to never um, trust myself or my decisions, and now I do. I can trust that. Yeah, I know what is the right path, and I try and listen to that and try and act in integrity with myself.
At some point, you made the choice, like follow your intuition of trust in your decisions. That you really wanted to change. You really wanted to work on yourself. It was you worked like 4 or 5 years now on yourself. How did you do that? Because you left your good paying job. You started working at smaller companies. Started this following this course and these trainings. How did you organize that in this existing world, that asks so much of you to have a house, to, you know, live in a certain way, and to do all these things that you need to do according to everybody else? Um, because I can see that a lot of people probably want like a switch in their lives too, but they have no clue how to get out what they are in now. They like the small part that they play in this huge machine. It
Mm.
it feels like impossible to get out because they have all these obligations set in their personal lives. How did you do that?
Yeah. I think I hit a moment where I was like, I need help. Like I just wasn't feeling happy. And so I found a therapist who's also a coach and started working with them. Like I had no idea. Like I had no idea this is what I was going to do, or this is how I was thinking. Like it's just continually evolving. I knew I wasn't happy, so I got help. And that was kind of my journey. And I worked with them for like 2 years, and I was in my job at the time, and it was fine, and I carried on, and it gave me some hope to be able to do that or work with that person, to one, just be able to, yeah, be more okay with stuff as it was, but also to start getting clearer on, okay, what is it that I really want to do, what's important to me, who am I really? If I take away, we did this exercise of like, what's your conditioned self versus your authentic self, and like looking at the differences of like, okay, this is who I thought I needed to be to make other people happy versus this is who I really am, and trying to then live more of the authentic version of me. And so yeah, I think, and I mean, maybe it's different for everyone. Maybe some people just leave, but maybe some people, it's the small, you just take small steps to look into yourself, whether that's working with someone or whether that's journaling or reading books or listening to podcasts or meditating or whatever else it might be. And just trusting that the right thing will, like, that you will follow your path. If you're committed to this and you want to make a change in your life, you have to make a consistent effort to show up and make that change. And I guess on the obligation stuff, I mean, we can, again, maybe we can shoot. Like, I think it takes some thinking of what do I really need? Like I was like, what do I really need? What kind of life do I live? And like I come from a certain amount of privilege that means I can do this. But I also was just like, I don't like, I don't need a lot, and I don't have obligations. I don't have kids and big commitments. So it's maybe it's different, but I think it can apply for everyone. If you really think about what are you spending money on, what is important to you, what really makes you happy, what kind of life do you want to lead, who do you want to be, and just consider that, and then consider what it's worth to you to not um do this. Like what are the implications? Like if you stay, if you feel this way now and you don't feel like something's going to change in your life, like what's going to happen in the next 5, 10 years? What impacts is it going to have on you? What impacts is it going to have on your loved ones? Like I was kind of like, I didn't think I was showing up in the best way for the people that I cared about. And I was like, I don't want that. I don't want to show up as the person who's just like obsessed with the world, the world ending, and just really like judgmental and sad about the state of the world. I was like, I don't want that. Like, I don't want like it's see it impacting other people in my life, and I didn't want that for them or for me. So yeah, I guess it's a what's important to you. And I did quite a lot of values exercise. What I do in coaching, like coaching people as well, is what is really important to you. And for some people, it will be that like having a nice house and earning a good salary is important to them, and that's okay. Like not everyone needs to go on a path, but you can find inner happiness or inner alignment within a certain circumstance, and you don't really know how it's going to end up or where you're going to go or what's going to happen when you start working on this stuff. But I think it's yeah, I think it's worth it. I think if you think about, I don't know, I don't know how tapped into like dying you are, or just thinking about the fact that we're all going to die, and like what is it that you're here for? Like how do you want to enjoy the one life that you have? You don't know when it's going to end. Like let's enjoy it and
Mm.
do what we think is best. Yeah.
So I think the interesting part, what you just said, and I was reading the article about you on the Escape the City, and you talk about four themes, 4 years, or 4 years, four themes. And the first year it was self-love and compassion. The second was equanimity. I'm not sure if I understand what it is, but you can explain. And then the third year was gratitude, and the fourth year was being present and letting go of my ego. So what I'm dying to know is, were these themes like chosen before the year started, or was it something that you look back and was like then you saw the red thread and you saw the themes?
Yeah, yeah, I was looking back. I think the first thing I was like talking to a mentor, and when I was doing this on purpose program that you were talking about, and I was talking about myself, and I basically was talking as if I was a complete failure, as if like I'd like my inner critic was so strong, and he literally just shone a mirror and was just like, "You've had an amazing career, and you seem like really accomplished in what you're doing. Yet the way you are talking to yourself about yourself is really is really harsh." And that was like a real wake up call for me to be like, "Oh yeah, I if I don't need to do that, and actually that's probably quite detrimental to me to have such a harsh inner critic." So that kind of then just started that journey. Equanimity, which is all about kind of finding calm within the storm. Like how do you remain calm in the storm? Coincided with me getting a puppy, so that's probably that. And gratitude was one of the. I feel like I heard, I'd always known gratitude was useful, like,
Mhm.
and I knew meditation, like I knew all these things before I actually started doing them properly. I knew they were good, but I didn't really know why. And then gratitude, I think you're just tapping into the good feelings that make us feel good. Like a lot of courses and different stuff I've done, or um, what I explore in Buddhism, I practice with Plum Village, and they talk a lot about sowing the good seeds. Like the more our mind, I was at a talk on Saturday, they're like, the mind is 80% negative thoughts, like how people generally think it's 80% negative, 70% repetitive thoughts. So we're constantly always having this is going on. Like our mind is just wired to the negative based on the past. And we actually have the ability to shift it. Like they know, that's from my neural pathways, like your mind is just going down a certain track because it's familiar, and it's like, oh, this happened, I'm going to be annoyed about it, or I did that, so I'm going to think that about myself. And it's like, oh, once you realize you can shift that, and if the more you tap into gratitude and joy and the good things in life, the more you're creating these new neural pathways. It's like I think of like a path in a forest. Like it's easy for something to happen, to something in the external world to happen, and for you to go down the negative thought spiral. Whereas if you can kind of bring your awareness back and be like, no, I'm going to choose a different thing. I'm going to choose to be grateful for the fact that that thing happened, which normally I would be annoyed about, but I'm actually going to choose to be grateful for the lesson, or to be grateful for that other person for doing that, or whatever else it might be. You start creating new paths in the forest, and the old ones um, get overgrown, and then your experience of life is just more joyful, which also gives you just energy to do more things that you enjoy, and to just feel better about life. So yeah, that's that one. And then yeah, the presence one just came from I read Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now, when I was doing this really long walk on my own, and yeah, it just really changed something in me and made me realize that like, yeah, this is the only moment we have now. And if we can tap more into the present moment, it's the same as like flow state or anything like that. I remember I did a maybe a couple of years ago, I joined the Climate Change Coaching Alliance Festival, and they were basically saying like we're all in flow, like if we were in flow state more, if we just acted from the present, if we acted from this more creative, inspired, motivated place where we're working towards something that we really care about, like that's how we solve the world's problems when we come from that state versus coming from a state of fear or being worried about what other people are going to think about us or feeling like we're not good enough. So the more you can tap in to your inner state, and that, yeah, I think I talked about in that article, the focusing on my being purpose rather than my doing. So I've kind of, yeah, become less attached to what good do I do in the world and more focused on the state in which I am coming from and who I am, who I'm becoming, who I'm being, and yeah, nurture that. And then that kind of feeds itself or creates from the inside out.
I've done like phases with the gratitude because I really like the gratitude part. In the gratitude journal, it's like a small booklet, right? And I wrote down 10 things that I'm grateful for at the end of the day. And the 10 is really an interesting number here. I got it from James Altucher. What he talks about was saying, okay, if you have like 10 ideas and saying 10 things that you're grateful for, like you get to number five pretty easily, right?
Mm.
You do like, oh, the sun is shining. You get all these everyday things that you think you could be grateful for. But then when you get to number seven, eight, nine, and 10, it becomes more difficult. You have to really push yourself to think about the things you're grateful for. So I like this a lot. And what it also gave me after a while was seeing that these are the small things that I'm really grateful for. Small actions, small things that happen that we do. One of them, for example, is cooking with my wife. So I have my office in my home and it's upstairs and the kitchen is just below me. I could just continue my work until dinner is ready, or I could just stop now and just go downstairs and cook together. It's an easy change. It's an easy switch because staying in my office and work a little bit longer is not really helpful. Um, and it's so much more joyful and grateful to just cook together and just have dinner together so that it's a process of me and her and the relationship and you know um, having conversation together instead of just being alone in my office and just trying to do something which probably is also helpful to somebody, but it's different. So to me that really helped to writing down 10 things that I'm grateful for, like every day. I do it with phases. I'm not doing it now, but I'm just when I'm thinking about it, go like, oh yeah, could be a good idea just to go back to it now. Um, and the part that you mentioned, like that you feel like a fear for the things that happen in the world. And I was also thinking, oh yeah, anger, right? So when you're angry, that's also not helpful. When you're in the state of more that grateful what's going on, that gives you more energy and it gives you ideas of what you could do or what um, contribution you could do. So it gives you a lot of positive ideas, like what the climate change coaches told you. So I like that part. But anger got me in my head. So I go, yeah, when you're angry at stuff, it's not helpful. It's not helping you when you're angry. You don't get creative when you're angry at stuff. So at
Mm.
least not in my opinion.
Yeah. It shows you though what you. I feel like anger is showing you what you care about, or
Yes, definitely. Yes, that is true.
it tells you something, and then you're like, okay, how do I just turn this? Yeah,
Exactly.
I love what you're saying about gratitude and it being like the simple things. Like I feel like we're just simple. Like I love birds. Like I love bird song and stuff like that. Like and the more I think people can tap in to just enjoying the simple things in life, the less we are needing. Like I got to the phase of just like when I was talking earlier about like what do you really need? Like what makes you happy? Like the more I found inner peace with myself, the less I need externally. So like I don't need to go off and do holidays and take break from my work like I do. Like, everything's just simpler. Like I like camping now and just doing stuff that is going out and hiking and like that. Like that makes me feel good now, rather than the kind of before it was like, okay, to be happy, I need to go out for nice meals. I need to go on really fancy holidays. I need to buy myself loads of things. And like, I don't really buy myself anything. Like, I don't, I just, yeah, I found because I have more of this joyful gratitude for everyday life, then I want the less, which is also kind of what the world needs, right? If we weren't all buying things, yeah, because we think it will make us happy, then we could find it within, and then everything would be simpler and people would be happier. And if everyone's happier, then the world is happier. So yeah,
Yeah, to me, it's all about enoughness, right? So the idea is to be very aware of what makes me happy and what is enough. And like you just mentioned, it takes almost nothing to be happy, right? So tell me a bit more about the long walk you took. What was that?
I did. Called the South Downs Way, which is just in the south of the UK. And I did it over 8 days. And yeah, it was when I finished my job and I was like, I need to just go out and do something. And it was my kind of trial of yeah, having a holiday that was more nature connected, that was simple, right? I wasn't doing anything. Like all I was doing was walking. I bought food. um and yeah, I was so happy. And I like and I was listening to Power Up Now, which helped. Although I spent quite a lot of time just actually being silent. I'd always spend the mornings just like listening. And I always do that now. Like I walk every day with my dog. Um, and I never listen to to anything. Like I'm quite conscious now of like absorbing too much knowledge, information about the world, because it just takes me off into like all these different places when I actually just value more being present and the state that actually appreciating things around me can do for me. So yeah, it's been good. I'd love to do another walk like that again, but now I'm just like super happy in like the woods right by my house. I walk it every day, and every day it's different. And um, yeah, that's again just appreciating the simple things and appreciating just being in nature and yeah, falling in love with nature. I think sometimes we're trying to fight for nature rather than realizing that we are nature, and actually just really focusing on feeling connected to it. Um,
Yeah, if you look at from that point of view, we are nature. We are part of nature. So taking care of ourselves means also taking care of nature.
yeah,
So it's a self-sustaining system, right? So if we could just fight for or attack and companies who don't do good to nature, but we can also just take care of yourself, and that also takes care of nature, right? So and when you do go in the woods and you walk and you fall in love with nature, you become more aware, and at the same time, I think also at the same time, we or you know as humanity, as society, we should work on the degrading of the biodiversity, right? So that it's not just me, but with the work that I'm doing for me, I can do other work with other people, and that changes the system slowly, step by step. That's how I see it.
I think it's kind of like you're resourcing yourself so that you can give back, and use that in a way that you want to create the world that you want to see.
Yeah, and for me, yeah, resourcing yourself, some people translate that. So I need to build a large company, make a lot of money. When I have a lot of money, then I can give, right? That's also how they translate that for themselves sometimes. And I feel, okay, that's the that's the opposite. Then you're just using the system, the capitalist system, and just using all these external factors to supposedly make you feel happy. And then finally, when you're able to give, you finally feel happy because you're giving. Why not start now? Why not just start at the beginning, but just giving with what you do? And then, on the way, you will just have a great journey. You just have a great life instead of just doing stuff at the end of something, just do it from the beginning.
Yeah, I love that. I spoke to a regenerative coach and she was like, if you feel like you don't have enough, give something away. And it is this constant like stop. We need to stop striving and trying to change things or do things or have a massive or like impact and just like yeah, how do you just do it now and just give back now rather than thinking yeah you have to do something impressive or grand.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, I remember I was looking at my wardrobe in winter and being like, oh, I don't have a jumper to wear. And then I was like, no, like I always buy from secondhand like charity shops now. And I was like, no, I don't need a new jumper. I have jumpers. And then I just cleaned out my wardrobe and like took a load of stuff to the charity shop because I was like, I have so much. Like I have so much. Like I do not need a wardrobe full of this many clothes. And I don't really care. Like if the jumper is one I've worn for 5 years and I'm bored of it, like that is really not what's important in the life in like the world right now. So
Yeah, yeah.
give it away.
Heather, I really loved having this easy, slow, gentle conversation. That's how I experienced it. Looking at the importance of not necessarily self-improvement, because then I think that has a connotation that people, get fixed on, but looking at a way of how to become more of yourself, find your inner peace, understand what you really want to do, trust your decisions, looking with gratitude to the world, so you don't look with anger to the world or with worries or with sorrow or with anything else. I think it's really helpful that we as humans, you know, if you as a listener at least can use something of this conversation to see how you can, pay more attention of the things that you can do for yourself that improve the quality of your life. Because if you do that, you can more easily help improve other people's lives just by being you. You're already improving other people's life by being a different person. So I thank you very much, Heather, and see you in the next show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me and for that beautiful summary.